Hello, friends. How's everybody doing? We are drinking a classic again. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. $9.99 for a 6-pack at Rite Aid. Might be the best deal I've ever seen at a Rite Aid in my life. What's everybody drinking? We'll let some people file in before I get into my rant. It's not what you guys think. I wouldn't say that it's going to be a critical rant. It's not going to be like past rants, but I got some thoughts that I got to get off my chest. So a rant in that regard. But we're going to start like we always do. What's everyone drinking? We got a Coors Light. We got a No Coast IPA by Loca Beer Works, Colorado. Trader Joe's Hard Cider. We got a Modelo. Costco Scotch. What's that TikTok account? Kenneth Kirkland. I think that's the bit. We got bourbon. Guilty as charged. Steven's drinking a Mountain Dew. Where's your beer, Steven? Get a beer. It's hops with pop. Get with the program. We got Woodford Reserve. High quality H2O. Can't go wrong with that. Kona Big Wave. I think I had a Kona last week, didn't I? All right. We got people filing in here. We love it. I should say that I'm going to do a rant every single time because I usually do start with some form of a rant. But like I said, got some thoughts I want to get off my chest. Got a Voodoo Ranger. Miller Lite. French press coffee. Feels like too late for that. Got Jameson is okay. Pacifico on a Monday night? Absolutely. Steven doesn't drink alcohol. Mountain Dew is as crazy as it gets. All right. To each his own. Got a Sculpin from Ballast Point. All right. The people want the rant. Okay. So here we are, guys. The Los Angeles Chargers, okay, can clinch a playoff spot on Sunday or on Monday in Indianapolis, according to the New York Times playoff simulator, if they beat the Colts and they get losses from the Patriots, Raiders, and Jets. Clinch a playoff spot. Okay? And considering where things have been at various points this season, the fact that the Chargers can now potentially clinch a playoff spot in Week 16 says so much about what this team is, what their identity is, and the coaching job that Brandon Staley has done this season. Okay. And I got back from the locker room last night at SoFi Stadium and I was sitting at my computer getting ready to write. And I had this thought. This team's identity has come into clear focus. And what the identity is resiliency. That is what this team is all about. Resiliency. And they've shown it time and time again this season. And every person in this chat right now has at one point this season called for Brandon Staley's job, has said something in this chat about how Sean Payton would lead this team to the promised land. But guess what? Brandon Staley deserves a ton of credit for what he has done with this team this year and the resiliency that he has bred. Resiliency. That is what this team is all about. And it damn sure starts with their head coach, a man who has been resilient his entire life. He has cultivated that within this team and within this culture. And he deserves credit. Full stop. Now let's go through this, right? Because there's a lot of ways to talk about this resiliency. We can start with the injuries. We talked so much about these injuries, right? You lose your all-pro left tackle. You lose your all-pro edge rusher. You lose your cornerback that you paid $85 million. Your top 3 wide receivers play 15 snaps with each other through the first 13 weeks of the season. Your defensive line gets cleaned out. And yet every time this team has needed, all right, not wanted, but needed a response, they have provided it. They have conjured it. All right. And that doesn't come from nowhere. All right. The players obviously deserve a lot of credit. A lot of this resiliency starts and stems from the quarterback, Justin Herbert. Okay. The way that he has responded, not just to his injury, but to these down moments. But let me tell you that culture is not just a cliche. Culture matters in professional sports and particularly in the NFL. And the culture of this team is resiliency. That starts with the head coach. Okay. Let's go. But battling through all these injuries obviously is a big part of it. Okay. But let's go through some of these moments in the season, right? 38-10 home loss to the Jaguars. 1-2. For a lot of people in this chat, the season was over after week 3. Over. What do? Chargers come back. They rattle off 3 straight victories, including 2 on the road. And listen, were they great games? Were they beautiful performances? No, but they won the games that they had to win. Okay. Week 7, home against Seattle, get blown out again in an ugly performance. Head into the bye week, come back, and that Atlanta game, all right, the defense responds in the second half. They play well on third down. There's that wild play where there's the double fumble. And what does Justin Herbert do? Hits Josh Palmer and puts the Chargers in field goal range. They're down 2 kickers. They got a rookie kicker, comes in, and Cameron Dicker hits the game winner. Like, that is what I'm talking about. That is resiliency. Down to your 3rd freaking kicker, and Cameron Dicker comes in and hits the game winner. And listen, like, a lot of this credit should go to the players as well. But everything about a culture of a team starts with the head coach. Like, this stuff is not possible unless resiliency is in the head coach's system, and it is what the head coach is about. All right. Following that Falcons game, 5-3, 2 straight blown fourth quarter leads, 1 in San Francisco, 1 at home against the Chiefs. Justin Herbert has opportunities in both of those games in the fourth quarter with the ball in his hands, throws interceptions in both of those games, comes back the next week, gets a chance to win the game in Arizona. What does he do? Leads what is, in my opinion, the most impactful game-winning drive of his career to that point. He's done it 13 times now already. Changes a play call on 3rd and 7. Hits Eckler off play action at the goal line. Right? The following week, bad loss in Las Vegas. And then they come back without Derwin James these last 2 games, and they play like a top 5 defense in the league. Sebastian Joseph Day misses the Dolphins game. They're down 4 of their top 5 defensive linemen. Bryce Callahan's out. They got rookie Jasir Taylor playing in the slot. What do? They shut down one of the best offenses in football, one of the best passing offenses in football, one of the most explosive offenses in football. They completely shut them down. And listen, the players executed, but that game plan was fantastic. Staley proved why he got the job. And then Sunday they come out, play another whale of a game defensively. They show up with passion, with effort, with discipline, with toughness, with tenacity, and they go head-to-head, toe-to-toe, face mask to face mask with Derrick Henry. And yeah, he put up 104 yards. But 32 of those came in the fourth quarter when the Chargers were playing nickel. That was a damn good defensive performance, a damn good run defense performance. And here they are at 8-6, despite all of these injuries, despite all these moments, right, throughout the season where this thing could have gone completely off the rails. And let me tell you, it could have gone off the rails because I've seen it happen. I saw it happen in 2019. I saw it happen in 2020. Injuries, 2-7, season's over. That shit happens all the time in the NFL. But what great coaches do, what great head coaches do is they keep it on the tracks. They prevent it from getting derailed, and they give their teams a chance. John Harbaugh did it last year with the Ravens. I know they didn't make the playoffs, but they kept themselves in the thick of things. This is what good coaching is. Okay? Fighting through the adversity and emerging resilient. That is the identity of this team. And that identity does not exist without Brandon Staley. Full stop, period. End of rant. I hope that lived up to expectations. All right. Okay. So, defense played really well. Let's get into some specifics here. Really bad game for the offense. Give me 1 second, guys. My final thoughts are up, so I'm just going to tweet that and then we'll get into some specifics here. Frankie's whining at me. He doesn't like the rants. Sometimes you just got to go for it. So yeah, really kind of an ugly game offensively. Not kind of, definitely an ugly game offensively. It felt like they got away from the play action game. Herbert was at 30% play action rate in the first half, 30.8% of his dropbacks according to True Media. They got into a little bit more in the second half, but it felt like with the interior pressure, they could have gotten more into the play action game. It's pretty clear to me at this point that like the offense is at its most efficient version when they are featuring the play action game. And for whatever reason, it feels like Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, will deviate from that at times. But yeah, just overall, I mean, the plan for the Chargers was to come in. The Titans play a lot of light boxes with all of their injuries in the secondary. They're expecting a lot of too high shell coverages. They got a lot of too high shell coverages. Titans played too high on more than 30% of their defensive snaps. They had, light boxes on more than 60% of their defensive snaps. So the Chargers are trying to attack that with the running game. They had some success in the red zone running it, but overall it wasn't efficient enough. Running the football. And so, if you decide to run on early downs, that's going to leave fewer opportunities for play action on early downs. So all those play action rates are early down play action because obviously, you're not going to use play action on third downs, and that's going to, skew the numbers. So you focus on early downs. Justin made a couple bad decisions. The pick over the middle was a bad decision. Just threw it late over the middle, and Byard jumped that. The play at the end of the half was he was supposed to do what he did at the end of the game, which is throw the ball a million miles out of bounds. Left it a little too close to the sideline, and then McCreary made an excellent play on that. So you had a couple turnovers, some inopportune penalties, some negative plays, some sacks. The interior pressure got home a couple times. But I felt like from a play calling perspective, I just feel like they got to lean into the play action. Like when this offense has been at its best, it's getting Herbert outside the pocket on play action. I mean, the Dolphins game was a really good example. And like, I looked at it today and I sent the data to my brother after I made the graph because he's in grad school for data analytics at Columbia, and he's a little bit smarter than I am. Not a little bit, a lot of bit smarter than I am. But yeah, so I charted it. I charted basically early down play action rate over Justin Herbert's EPA per dropback. And there's a statistical correlation there between how efficient Justin Herbert plays and how often they're using play action early downs. Obviously, like it's not as simple as more play action equals better offense, better Justin Herbert, but there's a clear correlation there. And I think leaning into that is what this offense has to be the way it's currently constructed. So yeah, not a great day from the offense, but Justin Herbert did what he had to do in crunch time to win the game, his 13th game-winning drive of his career. Defensively, like I said, I mean, I thought it was an outstanding performance in the run defense. Braden Fajoko is playing out of his mind right now. Sebastian Joseph Day has been an excellent signing. He's been awesome all season. I don't really know what PFF is looking at with his grades. He's been just stellar against the run all year long. They've been able to generate a lot of pressure over the last couple of games. Their third down pressure rate has jumped almost 10%. You're getting some contributions opposite Khalil Mack because a lot of these protection plans are targeted at Khalil Mack, and you're getting some pressure from Kyle Van Noy. You're getting some pressure from Chris Rumph. Morgan Fox has been one of the best value signings in the league. They covered really well, and it was an excellent defensive performance. I mean, the only blemish, two blemishes, the one touchdown drive in the first half where they let Henry get loose. it felt like on that swing pass that went 37 yards that Kyle Van Noy like clearly got held on the edge. Like it was pretty obvious that the way the coverage was designed, that Van Noy was supposed to cover the flat there, and the right tackle was just had like, hold of his jersey with both hands. So it felt like a missed call, but like Henry got loose on that drive, but that's going to happen as long as it doesn't happen over the course of an entire game. And it didn't. And then, they kind of folded there in that 2-minute drive. They had a chance to win the game there. Gave up a couple completions to tight ends, and then Tannehill's able to sneak it in, but the Chargers respond offensively, and Justin Herbert does what he's done throughout his entire career, which is just make clutch plays. And yes, that's where things stand. 8-6, chance to clinch the playoffs on Sunday. Let's get to some questions on Monday in Indianapolis. Frank is whining. Kaylee, can you do something about him? Should I let him in? Let's take a poll. Should I let Frank in? Yeah, I'm going to be in trouble. All right, let's do some questions. Derwin James coming back. Brandon Staley said today that they're hoping he'll be back in practice this week. It is a different schedule because of Monday night, so media will be back at practice on Thursday, so that's when we'll have an update for you on him. Take a knee, then spike the ball at the end of the game. So I asked Brandon about the delay of game that they took. And he admitted it. He said we should have managed it better. He said that, in hindsight, what they should have done is, so Mike catches the ball. There's 21 seconds left. He's ruled in bounds. So the referee makes this motion, which means the clock is continuing to run. At that point, Mike gets up, runs to the center of the field to set up for the spike. There were 33 seconds left on the play clock and 14 seconds on the game clock when Herbert spiked it. And in hindsight, what they should have done is gotten everyone up to the line, taken a look at the clock and the play clock, realized they had as much time as they wanted, and just let the game clock run down to 4, 3 seconds, whatever, and then spike it, as opposed to having to run the additional play. What they were trying to do was spike it, get their substitutions in, run the play, take another 6 seconds off the clock with what Staley called the foul ball, basically just chucking it into the stands. But then, they had Brandon said a lot of things. It was loud. They were trying to get a substitution in for whatever reason. They couldn't get the playoff in time. It took a delay of game. And it was big in that moment because it added another 5 yards to the game-winning kick. Dicker hit it and ended up not being an issue, but definitely a mistake, and he owned up to it. Obviously a lot going on in that situation. You can understand the players saying get to the line and spike it, and then we can figure it out. I think the real issue was like get your substitution in, get the playoff. Like don't take a delay a game. Like, if you're going to make that decision there, like, okay, we're going to throw it out of bounds in the next play, like get the play in. Can't imagine it's that long of a play call when you're just deciding to chuck it into the stands and make sure you don't take those 5 additional yards, because you can't do that in that situation. It didn't matter, but definitely a mistake. But, in the same vein, right, like Brandon Staley's usage of timeouts on the Titans' final drive was absolutely excellent, right? And, like, I don't think people should take that for granted, that procedurally, operationally, game management-wise, 2-minute situations, the Chargers are really, really good in those situations, and they're not really giving away advantages in those situations because of how Brandon Staley is so detail oriented and the way he goes about these things. Like that stuff matters. And so, like, yeah, this was a mistake, but I can say there's probably been maybe 2 or 3 mistakes like this all season long. For the most part, they are always on it in terms of their time management. And those timeouts at the end of the Titans drive, that's what won them the game, or gave them a chance to win the game. Justin won the game for them and Mike, and then Cameron Dicker hitting the kick. But like those timeouts is what created the opportunity. And so, like, don't take for granted the fact that 98% of the time, this team and coaching staff is really on top of their game management. All right, thoughts on the third quarter. So, Chargers have now gone 9 straight third quarters without a touchdown. And I looked it up. It is the longest active streak in the NFL. It's tied for the longest streak this season. The Steelers went 9 games without a third quarter touchdown from weeks 5 to 14. And there have only been 3 longer streaks of third quarter touchdown droughts in the past 5 seasons. The Bengals in 2019, the Bengals in 2020, and the Dolphins in 2019. So it's bad. You know, what with football, when you're analyzing football, if you're going to do it properly, it's hard to make general sweeping observations about something like this, right? Because there have been moments in recent weeks where they've moved the ball well in the third quarter. It's not like they're going 3 and out on every possession. And so sometimes they're moving the ball well, they get in the red zone, and their red zone offense hasn't been great this year. And so that's been a problem. Other times they've had penalties, like they had a holding penalty on their second drive on yesterday. Then there's negative plays. Herbert took 2 sacks in the third quarter this past Sunday. They've had bad, negative running plays that have set them back, like in the 49ers game. And so it's like a lot of different things that are actually happening. But the general takeaway is, like, this has to be better. Like, they have to score more points in the third quarter because it's such a decisive point in the game. Like, there's a reason coaches focus on the middle 8, which is the final 4 minutes of the second quarter and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. It's a Bill Belichick staple, is winning those 8 minutes, because that's how you separate. And the Chargers just have not been good enough in the third quarter. And then, this past Sunday, you have Justin Herbert throwing a bad interception, which he throws 2 to 3 bad interceptions every single season. And so it feels like it's a lot of different small things. But the more overarching point is, like, it has to get better. They have to avoid these negative plays. They have to avoid the penalties. And when they are able to move the ball in the third quarter and they get in the red zone, they have to produce. Now, I think a lot of the red zone issues stem from the injuries and, not having your premium playmakers, because you need those types of players in the red zone to convert touchdowns. It's a condensed area of the field. An offensive coordinator once told me that he could have me at quarterback and move the ball in between the 20s. Where offensive coordinators and where players make their money is when you get inside the 20, and you need guys that can win matchups in those areas. And, they haven't had Mike Keenan and Josh Palmer on the field for most of the season. Now, they do have those 3 players now. They have Donald Parham back, and they're phasing him back in. We didn't get to see much of the, red zone passing game this past week, or any of it, because they ran 8 run plays in their red zone on 8 snaps because they wanted to run the ball in the area, and they did it effectively, and they were 2 for 2 in the red zone. So, I think having these pieces back is going to make a big difference, because then you have these 3 receivers on the field. You have Donald Parham, and you have Austin Eckler, who's a fantastic red zone producer. It's going to make it a lot easier to score in those areas. But overall, it's got to be better in the third quarter. It falls on everybody, because everyone's made mistakes at some point or another in the third quarter, whether Eckler fumbling, Justin throwing an interception, tight ends missing blocks, offensive linemen missing blocks, offensive linemen getting called for holding penalties, false starts, giving up sacks. Like, everyone is at fault. And then, The offensive coordinator's got to figure out a way to get it done. Joe Lombardi has to do more in that area. So it's on everybody. Like I always say, like, it's not, you can't really pin blame on one specific thing when you have an overarching problem like this. It's always a lot of different people, but everyone shares some of the blame, and everyone has to do more to get more production in the third quarter, because it's a big issue with the offense right now. As a massive Derwin fan, should I be kind of concerned about the defense playing better without him? What's the deal? So I wrote about it today. You can get my full thoughts and my final thoughts that I just tweeted out. Like, I don't think there's any merit to this idea that, oh, all of a sudden they're playing a more simplified version of the defense without Derwin, and that's why everyone's playing well. They were more simple in terms of their personnel groupings in the Dolphins game. They were less simple on Sunday. They varied their nickel package. They played with some 5-man fronts. They had Jasir Taylor in there at outside corner and base packages, and they were subbing in Asante Samuel and nickel packages. So there were a lot of moving parts. And then in the Dolphins game, it's not like they were more simplified in their groupings, but not necessarily more simple in how they played coverages. Like, a lot of the reason that they were dominant in that game is how they disguised coverages, how they rotated. I feel like the reason they've played well the past 2 weeks is that guys are taking advantage of their opportunities, and they have full command of what their role is in the game plan. And I think that's just a function of guys being in the system for as long as they've been in the system, and guys starting to play together more. The best version of this defense is going to exist with Derwin James on the field. And it's going to exist with Derwin James moving around, because that's how you get the most out of him. You need to use him as a blitzer. You need to use him in the deep part of the field. You need to use him in the slot. Like, he can do all of these things at a very high level. And so to not use him in those areas is to not maximize your defensive personnel. Like, I think it's a smart way to use him. I think if this defense gets to the best version of itself, it's going to be all of these supplemental supporting cast pieces, like an Alohi Gilman, like a Nas Adderley, like a Michael Davis, like a Bryce Callahan, like a Jasir Taylor, all of these guys playing consistent assignment sound football while Derwin James is on the field doing all the things that he can do. Now, obviously, we're not going to get a firm answer until Derwin James is back and we can see it. You know, if Derwin James comes back and you're starting to see some of these same issues on third and longs, in pass coverage that we saw earlier in the season, then that's probably an indication that maybe I'm wrong about this. But I'm pretty confident that having Derwin on the field, one of the best players in football, doing all of the things that he can do, along with all of these other players playing consistent and assignment sound, is how this defense gets to the place that it wants to be come playoff time. Where's JT Woods? I mean, listen, I've said this before and I'll say it again. A player can't be a bust as a rookie. It's not possible. So give him some time. He was going to be a project when they drafted him. We can discuss if maybe they drafted him too early, but when they drafted him, like, there were obvious issues about his game, particularly how he tackles in the open field. And when you can't tackle in the open field, it's really hard to trust that guy playing safety. And so they've thrown him in there. He played in the Cardinals game, and we saw what he looks like in the open field against an elite player in DeAndre Hopkins. It's not pretty. You know, at the same time, you have Alohi Gilman, who's playing fantastic football right now, and you have Raheem Lane, an undrafted free agent, who was playing over JT Woods in training camp because he's a very dependable player, a very smart player. And right now he just gives them more on special teams, and he's a more reliable player in dime packages and things like that. And so that's where JT Woods is at in terms of his place on the roster. Doesn't mean he's going to be he's a bust or he's going to be a bad player, but right now they have better options, and he's not particularly trustworthy when he's been asked to play defense. He hasn't really done anything with the opportunities he's been given. What are my thoughts on the sideline scuffle between Sebastian Joseph Day and Drew Tranquil? You guys blow my mind sometimes. All right. Massive win over the Titans. 8-6, moving to sixth place in the postseason race in the AFC playoff picture. And the only thing you guys can talk about is that two football players started yelling at each other on the sideline. It's the only thing. Everyone's tweeting at me. What happened? What happened? Listen, first off, Sebastian Joseph Day is an animated person. Like, he just has a big personality, and he's not going to bite his tongue when something's on his mind. And on top of that, like, it's a very emotional game. You know, at that point in time, like, the defense had felt like they played really good against Derrick Henry. They gave up a couple runs on that drive, and they were trying to figure out what went wrong. And there was some frustration there as far as like, hey, we're going to let him get to 100 yards, and we've kept him pretty much contained the whole game. And so that, you know, Drew said it after the game that they were they were talking about whether Drew was calling the right front and if he was mixing up the front. And there was a little bit of an argument, and like, that happens. I think the only reason you guys are talking about it is because the cameras picked it up. But guys get into arguments like that all the time. Like, it's just the way football is. It's an emotional game. It's a passionate game. Like, if anything, I see that, and it shows me that the players give a shit. They care. They care a lot about this team. And when I talked to Sebastian Joseph Day after the game, the first person that he gave a shout out to is Drew Tranquil. And so these things happen. Like, it's really, it's not, I don't even think it's a story. Like, I think it stemmed from the disappointment that they had let Henry get loose on a couple of those runs late in the game when they had really kept him contained all day. And they're trying to figure out what went wrong. I think it's a complete non-story. Did Dicker the kicker secure the spot moving forward? We'll see. I mean, it's not a decision the Chargers have to make right now. See how he finishes the year, and then you make a decision in the offseason. They can cut Dustin Hopkins and save, $1.6 million, something like that. They gave him an extension, but it's not a decision they have to make right now. But he's kicking well. He's made 2 game-winning kicks. He hasn't really proven that he can, consistently make kicks over 50 yards. He's only had 1 attempt all season, and he missed it. So, see how he finishes up the year and make a decision then. Current DT depth after the Gaziano injury. So you got Sebastian Joseph Day, you got Braden Fajoko, you've got Morgan Fox, you've got Tyler Davison, and you've got Christopher Hinton. I'm writing the numbers down as I say this. So those are probably going to be the 5 moving forward. Herbert extension in the offseason? I think so. Can we get a Popper versus Jeff Miller sideline shouting match? I would never yell at Jeff. He's a kind soul. What freed up the pass rush so much in the second half? I think a lot of it was just creating opportunities. Like, that's a big part of it, is like, if you only get, 15 second and third and longs in the game, there's just not enough opportunities to really create a pass rush, especially when, you're down one of your best pass rushers in Joey Bosa. So I think they consistently created a lot of third and longs and second and longs, known passing situations. I looked it up, and over the past 2 weeks, the Chargers have averaged on defense an opposing distance to gain of 9.1 yards, which leads the league over the last 2 weeks. So they're playing better on first down. They're stopping the run, and they're getting into known passing situations. And the more opportunities that a pass rusher gets, the better he's going to be. The offensive linemen wear down. The pass rushers get a better idea of how the offensive lineman is playing them. And the more rushes you get, the better you can do. And so I think it's just an opportunity thing. Seen a lot of JC Jackson questions. So he was booked in to a correctional facility in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, Bristol County. It's a civil situation. So I guess he was, in probate court and ended up being booked in the correctional facility. Um, that's really all I have for you guys right now. And it was a non-violent family issue. That's what I was told by the sheriff's office. So doesn't seem to me like anything significant, but I'm not really gonna speculate on it. That's the information I have, and he's out for the season. So Palmer went down. Yes, he did. So that was, I guess, he landed awkwardly, and Staley said it was kind of like a back thing. But he finished the game, and Staley said he's fine. How did Donald Parham look to me? He looked great. He's really effective off, some of those play action looks, especially when they get Justin outside the pocket. So, as he gets more comfortable, he's going to be a big piece of this offense. He was fantastic through the first couple of weeks of training camp before he suffered that hamstring injury. So just another weapon. And as they get more weapons, I think this offense is going to look better. Slater, realistic to come back. I still think it's going to be the postseason if he does come back. Joe Gaziano, how long is he out for? He is out for weeks. That's what Staley said. Mm-mm. Palmer, we talked about third quarter woes. We talked about do I think Herbert would take a pay cut? No, and he shouldn't. Stadium is finally starting to have a strong home crowd. Do you think the Chargers will have a diehard fan section similar to LAFC? I'll tell you what. Yesterday was the loudest I've heard so far from a Chargers fan perspective. The kick that Bullock missed from 51 yards, like that place actually got loud ahead of that kick. So there's momentum. There's obviously momentum. I think it's obvious. Very obvious. And we'll see. It's a process. Why did Jasir get snaps over Asante? That was to get a bigger body on the outside to defend the run and base packages. Richard Harrison, Nunkopi, whatever that is. Philip Rivers used to wear it on his hat. It was like it's something about like moving on to the next thing or whatever. I don't know literally what it translates to, but you've asked a million times. How do you say it? Now I begin. Yeah, right. On to the next thing. See? Yeah. I know what I'm talking about with my Latin phrases. World Cup, happy for Messi. That's my take. Nunc Cepi. There you go. Now I begin. Honestly, okay. This guy's saying in here that Mbappe was cost the World Cup by his team. I thought that was a bogus handball call for the tying goal on the penalty. Like, what? I didn't feel like that was in an unnatural position. I feel like that hasn't been talked about a lot. I thought that was a bad call. What I will say is Emilio Martinez, right? What a save. That I tweeted that was the best save I've seen under the circumstances. I don't think he stuck his elbow out. I thought he just turned his body. I mean, he couldn't see where the ball was, so it's not like he adjusted his arm to hit the ball. I don't know. I thought it was a bogus call. Mbappe is the Chargers kicker. How honestly, how long of a field goal do we think Kylian Mbappe could hit? I guess there's two, like in practice, I feel like he could probably hit like an 85-yard field goal or something insane. All right. My lovely fiance is cooking salmon. I can smell that it's almost done. So we're gonna wrap it up there. Everybody have a fantastic Hanukkah. Have a fantastic Christmas, whatever holiday you celebrate. Hopefully you're spending some time with your families. Have an eggnog and brandy for me. But I appreciate you all. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. And I will talk to you guys next week. We'll probably do our Hops with Pop on Tuesday, but I will let you guys know. Happy holidays. Love you all. Appreciate you joining. Peace out.